Now, earlier, Times Now had exposed how social media was weaponized to carry out the brutal murder of Kanhaiya Lal in Udaipur. Today, Times Now will show you concrete proof, graphs and social media trends to show a sharp spike in anti-Hindu hate speeches and codes online. Now, your channel has accessed the Rutgers University report, which reports a sharp rise in anti-Hindu disinformation across social media and messaging platforms. This spike was first noticed in November last year, and now again since June 2022. It reveals that memes and viral photos are being made to trend, especially in extremist Islamist networks. Most of the trolls, after analysis of 1 million tweets, are originating in Pakistan. First, let's show you some of these memes which speak of Hindu killing death squads and threaten to form an Islamic state in India. Now, we're talking about these tweets which valorize 26/11 attackers and mock crying Hindus, show anti-Hindu squad killing Hindus, also threatens of Islamic State across India. Also has depicted the swastika smeared with blood. Anti-Hindutva protest photo has been circulated in this, and also there have been threats of when Islam gains control of India. Moving on. The Rutgers report also shows how the genesis of anti-Hindu trolls seems to be in Pakistan. This is in fact the graph that actually talks about Pakistan. Look at that. The tallest bar there is of Pakistan. Then, of course, going on to different parts, there is Gujarat, India, Lahore in Pakistan, Karachi and New Delhi. Several of the other areas are, of course, much lesser. But look at the number of tweets that have originated from Pakistan as far as this particular area is concerned. Lahore and Karachi are the hubs of these Twitter trolls, and of course these are attempts to with a covert influence, in fact giving out anti-Hindu disinformation. Those are some of the takeaways as far as this Rutgers report is concerned. Moving on to the other aspect of the online onslaught that is in fact being done by these social media trolls. It's on Hindus in particular, says the Rutgers report, and look at the graph of the timeline. Starting from Jan 2021 to March 2021 to May to July, you can see these spikes that have happened right through 2021, the entire year, right up till March of 2022 is the period of this study. This talks about a spike in anti-Hindu slurs on 4chan website, one of the websites in fact that has been referred to. Also terms like Hindu and Pajit, in fact slur for Indians, has been used in this particular website. 14,000 comments using the term Pajit in November 2021. All right, so these are some of the takeaways as far as this particular study is concerned. Let's take this across to Dr. Joel Finkelstein, who's the director of the Network Contagion Lab at Rutgers University. Dr. Joel, thanks so much for joining us over here. You've analyzed how all of these tweets and some of these posts are coming in largely from Pakistan. Can you also take us through when this kind of activity peaks? Because there are at least two peaks that we've just shown in the graphic. Can you take us through what were the events happening at that point of time, and why is this so significant? Because this is the first time that there is a study that has been done that firmly establishes Hinduphobia that has been caught on social media.
That's right. So thank you for having me on today. Fundamentally, we are a lab that looks at the spread of hate and contagious ideas. And the tools that we use seek to understand how malicious networks disseminate ethnic hatreds in order to gain popularity or to influence real-world events. And so the analysis that we did in Hinduphobia was very surprising, because it's not a topic I think most people are familiar with or deeply educated about. And so the analysis that we did showed that this has been a hate that has been growing largely unrecognized for the past several years on social media, and that many of the actors who are sort of the usual suspects for this kind of extremist behavior were capitalizing on really slurs, coded language, creating a whole mythology that was intended to demonize Hindus, and specifically focuses on themes of them being filthy, or being suspicious, or replacing others, exotic forms of evil. So the analysis that we did showed that their portrayals of Hindus as filthy and defecating on streets, and there are genocidal images that tend to appear with cartoonish figures about murdering Hindus, decapitating them, celebrating terror against them, and otherwise persecuting them. And it's very hard to tell oftentimes in social media what is a serious threat versus what a joke is. This jokey coded language is specifically intended to disguise the volatile ethnic hatreds that are behind it in order to make it appear as though it's something confusing or a joke. So given the rise that we've been seeing lately, this is reaching peaks in as unrest on the mainland in India ensues.
Right.
We're suggesting that platforms really be made aware of this. The public needs to be made aware of it. It appears to be a very real hatred that has been growing in the dark. I think platforms have a responsibility.
Many would say that hatred and those incendiary comments could actually in the online space influence behavior in the physical space and actually lead people into taking action and in fact to making a difference as far as their physical activity or even violent activities are concerned. But let's quickly get on to the other graph that we were discussing over here. Please stay on with us, Joel, because this is the spike in the anti-Hindu slurs on Telegram in 2021 that is being analyzed over here. The use of the term Pajis and Hindu, you can see from 2016 to 2017, 2018, 2019, it's pretty much flat. There are, of course, a few spikes and troughs over there, but right from the middle of 2020 and peaking right through 2021 and coming down again in 2022. What do we associate with this peak right in the middle of 2021 over here, Joel?
So the peaks that we see often accommodate real-world events. You mentioned that the spikes in this animosity often precede or influence events in the real world. That is definitely the case. When it comes to the events in Mumbai, the riots, the terror attacks, we see spikes in this kind of behavior that frequently accommodate these kinds of real world incidences. And this is not unusual to Hinduphobia. When we've studied anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and other forms of hate, we regularly notice that spikes in activity that pertain to vulnerable groups will often precede real-world events that follow from these kinds of spiking activities. So we take these signals often seriously to be warning signs and early indicators of real-world events, violence, graffitis, dismemberment. Like there are events that proceed reliably from these kinds of signals. Platforms and civil society should be taking these signals seriously.
Absolutely. And in fact, several of the takeaways include spikes in anti-Hindu slurs on Twitter in June 2022. The term Paji, as we were, of course, saying, in fact, spike ending in 2020. Close to 300 tweets, in fact, using the term Paji in June 2022. So these are some of the takeaways of the use of the term Paji, the slur for Indians that is, in fact, being spiked in the end of 2020. Over 300 tweets using the term Paji in June 2022 is also one of the aspects that we are looking at over here. So repeatedly we're seeing these spikes, we're seeing the use of this term Paji. Then what is of great concern is that a lot of these are actually coming in from Pakistan, the country which actually the 26/11 terror plot was planned and executed from, and therefore it's not surprising to see these shocking tweets valorizing terrorist and ghastly incidents like 26/11.
Yeah, and I think what's really fascinating about not all of the tweets are from Pakistan, but what's fascinating is that in the analysis that we developed, we noticed that there were state-sponsored information operations from Iran and other countries, where their state-sponsored trolls would impersonate covertly both Pakistanis and Indians in order to disseminate anti-Hindu disinformation. And so that's very interesting, because what you can see is that these ethnic hatreds aren't just being utilized by groups that bear a grievance. They're actually being used by states for geopolitical purposes because they contain powerful impacts that could have strategic implications.
All right, Dr. Joel Finkelstein, thank you so much for joining us and sharing with us your findings and breaking it down for our viewers for what this really means as far as free speech is concerned, and also the fact that Hinduphobia very much appears to be part of the discourse, and there seem to be concerted attempts at least to spread this discourse on social media. Thank you so much for joining us with your findings. Let's listen into some reactions coming in on the story.
These are all constructed anti-Hindu dissent on social media. There is a group of the people. They are very resourceful and they are connected with the political and religious establishment outside the country. They are using social media as a tool to defame Hindu society and civilizational history of India. They are trying to defame Hindu society, Hindu culture, Hindu civilization, but that is not going to happen. I welcome such researches, and this exposes such elements who are both inside the country and outside.
And India's ambassador to the United Nations has in fact appealed and urged the world body to recognize Hinduphobia along with religious hatred against Buddhism and Sikhism in the global fight against terror.